So what we want to do is pick up, I think, from where we left off 2 weeks ago. Charles, apologies for not getting the word around last week. It was a flurry of email, should we not, and it seemed like several people had credits. So in an effort to try and keep this thing moving without having just 2 or 3 people present, we decided last week not to abstain. So geographic boundaries, we have an outline up here on the deck, and I think there's been a circulated summary as well. If you have a color version, you can see the underlines, the outlines, and things that have been pulled out. I had one addition on the top, the geographic boundaries. I wanted to see if people were comfortable with adding the words cross-jurisdictional between the words explore and opportunity. So if we read once form, the organization should seek to engage with Baltimore County in order to explore opportunities. It seemed a little vague. Maybe that's okay, but I thought it was really cross-jurisdictional because these would be things that would be, involving another legal entity besides Howard County. I'm not sure if we've concluded the next bullet, which was activities, scope of work. If there's anybody want to reopen any of the conversation to this point, we have a bunch of cross-outs, some new language. I'm comfortable with the changes that are reflected here. I don't know if anybody has in the last 2 weeks given it additional consideration.
Bless you.
I'm not hearing any change. We want to read it all through.
Looks good.
Yeah.
Great.
Before we move on to the mission statement. Okay. So I think we can accept the activity scope of work. Everybody all right with that? Yep. Mission statement, I didn't draft anything on this. I don't know if we want to wait till we get through the balance of this structurally and then come back to the mission statement. But I don't want to, I didn't draft anything up, and I don't ashamed to draft anything up.
I think after we get the scope of work, creating a mission statement that encompasses it would be easier than to try and, or you put the mission statement first and craft everything else to fit the mission statement.
I think the mission statement probably go above the activity scope of work, or maybe even above the geographic boundaries.
Well, I just meant in order of working on it.
In terms of coming up with it.
Yeah, should be above activity scope of work, for sure.
It seems like it flows from the first bullet. Under activity scope of work, collaborate with all pertinent government agencies, existing business organizations, and community groups. That encompasses the next bullet a little bit, where we talk about the word partnership with existing organizations, implement the strategic revitalization of the watershed area. Is that enough of a mission statement? So collaborate with all pertinent government agencies, existing business organizations, and community groups, and there would be a more artful way to describe that so it would be repetitive with the activity scope of work in partnership with existing organizations to help implement the strategic revitalization of the watershed area. And that, just a quick read, seems to be what picks up the general theme of activity scope of work. Are you all following what I'm suggesting?
No. Where are you?
First bullet, under activity scope of work.
Okay.
Collaborate with all pertinent government agencies, existing business organizations, and community groups. And then I drop down to the next bullet, to help implement the strategic revitalization of the watershed area, period. And that, to me, kind of summarizes the mission of the organization. Again, collaborate with all pertinent government agencies, existing business organizations, and community groups to help implement the strategic revitalization of the watershed area. And I think thematically it seems to capture most of what we defined as the activities and scope of work, without going into all the nitty-gritty details of that long list of activities.
So to me, that well, I have no issues at all with the activities and scope of work. In fact, most of this is great. Thank you for pulling it all together. I think that, as you just described, I think feels a little broader. It feels to me like do everything to help implement, as opposed to what I think I think the consensus we've been trying to land on has really been about this sort of property development, leasing, whatever, all the stuff in that 1, 2, 3, fourth bullet, or what was the fourth bullet? To do the other things, right? So it's kind of to do this property stuff so as to then, support and revitalize or whatever. I'm just afraid, as you have as the first 2 bullets, excluding the one that was deleted, it's really, really broad.
I could have, just for you guys to just look at, this is the vision and mission of the Southeast CDC in Baltimore.
Yeah, to me, mission statements are in themselves just a broad description of what the organization does. And then the nitty-gritty is in your bylaws. And
That's the vision, so this is their mission statement.
Right. So
And I think you have to think of it like, hey, what does your organization do? I can say it in one sentence and it's very clear and distinct, like, oh, you manage buildings in Ellicott City, or oh, you oversee revitalization of the historic district. Oh, like, I don't think somebody should question back, oh, what does that even mean? Like,
yeah, and I don't disagree at all with the mission as described. I just think because there are so many other government, quasi-government, and not-for-profit entities in Howard County, some of the CDCs are filling a void that's like completely a void. There's nothing. Whereas I think there's a lot going on with, people having a bunch of missions here already. And anyway, that's my opinion.
Does the ECP have a mission statement?
Yep, yeah, it should be. Well, we have a new website, so I don't know where it would be buried, but scroll down. It should be right on the front page there, at the bottom, all the way down.
Let me go to the main.
I mean, isn't that where we start with the word collaborate?
Yeah, I thought the word collaborate kind of
All the way down.
softened the tone. I want to focus on that word, thank you, Charles. But it's collaborate with all pertinent government agencies.
We work to preserve the heritage and vitality of Old Ellicott City while creating and enhancing economic growth. Historic Presidents, Chamber of Commerce.
That's a new mission statement.
Nope, that's
No,
no, that's just,
our
it's a new
prevailing-
website.
New website.
New website, yeah, sorry.
So it's very.
And I'm not even arguing that ours is like awesome. I'm
Well,
just
no,
saying,
it's
some of
broad and
this has been
nebulous. It doesn't
inherited
get
and
into
we
it doesn't get into the nitty gritty that says we promote this event, this way. It's
well,
very
we do,
broad.
I mean, we're more than an event shop.
No, I'm just using it as a single example. It's very broad and it's good.
Here's another one.
I like that, actually.
What if you
I
tie it
like
to
that
the Ellicott
piece,
City
I like
master
in
plan?
there, which goes along with the term collaborate, the connect, in terms of, because you're right, and there are multiple organizations that exist that may feel like toes are being stepped on or what have you, but I think part of the role of or the primary role of the CDC is to pull all of those resources together and to use its resources to support all of what's going on.
If we say to support the Ellicott City Watershed Master Plan implementation, it supports a soft plan.
Is
Are you
that
actually
the
trying to
only
write a
the
mission
CDC
statement,
does?
or are you just, well, I know, but are you just trying to come up with bullets here? Because putting the Ellicott City Watershed Master Plan in your mission statement is probably not.
And
In
that's
my
what
mind,
it-
mission statement, I know, but just think that if someone, let's say, outside of Howard County, like myself, were to read that, I would kind of be like, well, that's kind of boring. Like, what is that? I mean, the idea that, like, we want to revitalize Ellicott City, and then when you drill down, you explain, like, we're doing that by helping to implement this, we're doing that by this, we're doing that. But to get into that level of detail in your first broad sentence, then you're hitting them,
And
I think it might be a bit
And
much.
I'm being even pickier than you, because I hear the word revitalize, and I hear that thing that you want to accomplish, and then you're done. And I don't see that as our CDC. I see a CDC, like, for example, when you look at this mission statement, promotes healthy, vibrant, and diverse communities. That's forever. That's not as soon as we clean up our stuff. then we're out of here. You know what I mean? Once we get it revitalized, then we're done.
Kind of like this one, of all
Yeah,
the
like
mission
that.
statements
Yeah.
we've seen so far.
Yeah.
I mean,
Can we-
it's aspirational, you know, and to your point, it aspires to more than just,
Solving the immediate
Narrow.
problem at
yeah,
hand.
I mean,
Why don't we use that as a guide and come up with a.
Change the first word to healthy to safe.
Change the what, y'all?
Change healthy to safe. Promotes
And
a
change
safe.
Southeast Baltimore to Ellicott
Right,
City,
right.
call it a
Right.
day.
No, a safe, vibrant, diverse communities. I mean, you know, and it's not. I want to both address that we're talking about business and residential communities.
That's right.
I mean, because we are greatly intertwined here. You know, this is. I've said before, it's our village. It's, you know.
But to do what? I'm going to be the contrarian because that's the role I've taken in this thing, obviously, and I do not enjoy pissing people off, and it's not my intent at all. But I think, and if my organization isn't doing its job well enough, and this organization can come in and do it better, then have at it. That's great. What I do think is the case, though, is we've sort of bounced around all sorts of different. You know, we talk about we're gonna deal with this property that the county doesn't want to deal with, that people have said, you know, the counties aren't really best suited to be taking over property. We've talked about the courthouse and this, that, and the other thing. And then we also and we seem to agree on that stuff, but then we'll go into and do all these other things. But it's all these other things that, like, what other thing? I mean,
Well, I think what we've decided is that the management and the acquisition of these properties is the seed for the economic development of the CDC so that it can do it's the funding for the other things. And so when you have somebody who's in place who has the real estate commercial wherewithal to come in and use those properties to generate the income on a continuous long-term basis, then those funds become a source of supporting those other missions and all of those things that are trying to be accomplished. Am I right?
Yeah, but I think the mission statement has to be somewhat broad, like I think you said that. It can't be too specific.
Right.
As long as it encompasses overall what you're gonna do. It leaves you enough room to make changes, tweak things, look at other opportunities. But if you're too specific in the mission statement itself, then what you're doing is you're limiting yourself as to what you can do.
I put the handcuffs on before you.
yeah, I like the community building aspect of that long mission statement that seemed to resonate.
And visions and missions are meant to be broad.
Not the Chamber of Commerce
Right.
book.
No, the CDC,
The Southeast
Southeast
CDC.
Boston.
Yeah, it's building community, and I think that's what's missing here.
Right.
You know, we have
Yes.
obviously an array of organizations, we've dissected all of them, we see a lot of needs that aren't being addressed from the existing array of entities that are out there. And I think if we can keep that up on the deck very much.
Or
Here are some lists, this is just a list of words I made as Sheena was clicking through. So promote, collaborate, revitalize, diversity, preserve heritage, vitality, growth, liaise. Like, we're taking a lot of specific adjectives, but you know, can we decipher in this list, like, what is our priority? What are we?
Maybe we don't want to be too prescriptive, maybe we want to be a little more broad instead of trying to be specific.
Yeah.
And use language like community building to me, which is, I think, a broader mission, but one that encompasses economic revitalization,
Right.
properties, but broader things, affordable housing, maybe other things that this entity could do. And it's up to the entity and its board and its collaborative work with all the other entities that exist to figure that out.
that's the sentence I think is key. Is it's the collaboration with the existing entities that are already doing those functions.
Right.
You don't have to recreate or try and do their job already. You're simply creating collaboration between them and other entities that may not happen as frequently or as often.
Charles, that's why I focus on the word collaborate. When I opened this up, and I hadn't written anything, obviously, and I'm here free-forming with everybody else, but I like how that second bullet, or really the first bullet, kind of brings that to the fore.
We could have to.
mission statement.
Hey, Terry, can you get one second?
So-
It's two pieces of paper.
If the CDC or CDO, we've not had a claim to be formed here, if it were to promote a healthy, vibrant, diverse community in the watershed area, the Ellicott City watershed area, creative community development projects and improving programs, I don't know what the improving programs relates to, but, you know, on a collaborative basis with all existing entities, how does that feel?
Say that again, Mike.
Taking this mission statement from the Southeast CDC organization, if we were to wordsmith this a little bit and say that the CDC, CDO that we're here to discuss promotes healthy, vibrant, diverse communities in the Ellicott City watershed area through creative community development projects and programs in collaboration with, to pick up Charles's theme, with all of the players that we have here. So it's,
Yeah, that would be covering all bases, really, when you think about it. We're collaborating, community development can be residential or commercial.
I mean, who's opposed to healthy, vibrant, diverse communities? If you are, you probably don't deserve a seat in this room.
I did like Charles's, like, input
Well,
first state.
and maybe instead of replacing the word healthy, just add the word safe in there.
Safe.
Keyword, right, Angie, safe.
Yeah, we want to
I mean, it's all relative, right?
Yeah, safe is in the eye of the beholder. But, yeah, I think healthy is probably because of lead paint and other concerns in that part of Baltimore City, it's probably a much bigger mission than the one we're dealing with, so I'm happy to deal with that word substitution.
I see healthy as being more like stable, not like health
Yeah.
care, maybe,
Maybe.
like.
Well, lead paint, I get them with healthy because, I mean, you think about all the houses on West End that they're redoing, all pre-75, probably slathered with lead paint.
Not like the windows.
You don't like what? The
I
word
said
out?
not like the windows cells.
We lost asbestos.
Yeah.
And I think especially if we're trying to make that connection between the master plan and the objective of the administration to keep the area safe, I do think it might
Yeah.
behoove us.
Add that word in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. A lot of discussion.
Well, what does safe bring to the table? That's what I'm trying to understand. Is it?
Oh, we've had
What
two
are we talking about? We're talking about
Literally.
crime, or we're talking about, what are we talking about when
All
we
of
say
the
safe?
above. But, I mean, right now, we're looking at the immediate scenarios. We're looking at a scenario where people are dying in floodwaters.
Right,
We want the area to not do that.
to not do that,
anymore.
okay.
Yeah.
So is there?
Not to put too fine a point on it.
That was kind of the metric used for the 5-year plan, was to make, if I'm not saying, it was to make Ellicott City safe. You were supposed to, the idea was to make it safe for our inhabitants, for our visitors, everybody. So it was safe. Turned out safe meant that you had a way to egress and get out of town, and that was the bar. It was.
Okay, to take on Matt's role and to not be too specific. Then would an outsider or someone beyond where we are right now understand what is meant by safe when they read the mission statement? Is there another, I'm just wondering if there's something else along those lines that would better,
Good point.
yeah, better
We-
than- yeah.
Because you're talking about things that every organization, every institution in the region, oh yeah, we do that. It says nothing. It's like, I think, I'm with Matt a little bit, I think a good place to start is, oh yeah, you know, if I was to tell
Mark it
somebody.
We have a cheat.
We can go now.
We can go now. Mission accomplished. I see you guys in Bear Hill. I'm buying.
If I was to explain to somebody,
Mission
you know,
accomplished.
okay, this is the genesis of it, it's to oversee the implementation of the master plan. If it does more things, great, you know, but I don't know, I'm just in the conversation, oh yeah, what does this do?
But to me, the mission statement sets a tone, and the activities, the bullets, items really talk about the work product, the work plan. So I think I'm looking for something that's a little more overarching, Gary, without being that definitive about
Then we should,
implementation.
it's everything. It just, yeah,
Well-
say it and not spend a lot.
And I hear you, Gary, because at the end of the day, again, vision statements and mission statements tend to be very broad, overreaching, and they exist for forever. Well, yeah, that's it. But they're there for forever for the organization. Now, if we want to talk about the business plan and like what's phase one, and phase one becomes, this is what we do with regard to the implementation of the master plan, but then once the master plan is implemented, do we dissolve the CDC because we no longer have a
The
lot?
master plan would take 50 years
Okay,
to
fair enough.
complete. And yes,
But
those
it'll be
things, so
updated
you're-
along the way, and what if they change the name of it? I mean, all
yeah,
of those
yeah,
things.
it just evolves.
And the
It
mission
it
statement
never
should
ends.
be updated too.
It can
right?
be,
Nick,
sure.
excuse me, over time, it can evolve too, as the organization takes root, because as it begins to take root, it's going to begin to understand better, all of us will understand better what it can and can't do. So it will shift, it will move, it will be flexible and fungible. So I was looking for somebody that sets a tone, just a tone, like aspirational kind of thing, that this is what this entity does, and then we get into the meat and
How it's going to do
potatoes.
it. I mean, activity scope of work, I think absolutely should be the watershed master plan, should be there. But for the mission statement, they're usually not as specific.
Could you use something like a holistic, collaborative approach to whatever? I mean, that's what, one of the things I think
Well,
is
what
missing
if,
is collaboration.
what if we paste the language from the South Baltimore CDC? We can, do we have the flexibility to paste that language in?
Mhm.
Great, and let's bring it into the mission statement piece section.
plagiarism.
And then. The what?
Plagiarism.
Now we're
it's
gonna
not.
wordsmith
We're
it.
gonna change it.
You're gonna Mike Smith it.
I'm on a roll. That's a new one, Gary. That is a new one. I better run to
Two
the
on the
patent
board
office
tonight for
right
you.
now. I'll be right back. I gotta go put that in the patent office. So, healthy, so do we agree on safe as opposed to healthy?
Can I just,
I don't-
can I just
sorry.
pose a question to you all?
Yes.
What in the scope of work has to do with safety?
Great question. Nothing right
That's the whole
now.
point.
That's where the watershed master plan comes.
Well,
That's
I would
not-
say managing the buildings. So if you're going to be taking the back end off of Kaplan, then this becomes something that oversees Kaplan, for example. You probably aren't going to have a permanent use, or perhaps maybe not in the short term, a permanent use on the first floor of Kaplan. You may come up with a strategy for how to use it in a way that you feel is safe. So management of the buildings, I would imagine, would be, I mean, it's going to be, safety is going to be paramount to that work, I would imagine.
I think we need a
While
better way
I,
to
while I
say it.
agree with what Nick's saying, I also have to go back to what Chris was saying about, like, what are you telling the outside world then? Can't come here because we always have active shooters,
Right.
can't come here because we have tornadoes, can't come here because we have, I don't know, AIDS. I think it complicates like the message that you're trying to send to the outside.
do we
world.
wanna
So
put it
I
ourselves?
kind of agree with Shayna's point
Do we want
that,
to use flood mitigation, or do
No,
we
it's
just leave it out
without-
but
altogether?
that's not what this
Sure.
organization's gonna do either.
No, it's not. I mean,
So
that's.
I don't think that that's,
So we could drop the word entirely, and we could drop the healthy thing. And I think Shane is a little concerned about having this entity step beyond the boundaries we've defined, where it gets involved in the engineering solutions and the other things. I understand if that's the concern.
I just, looking at your scope of work, like, there's nothing here that speaks to this organization has a hand in public safety. Public safety is one of those inherently governmental functions
Yeah,
that
that's fair enough.
should never
Yeah.
belong to, an outside organization.
Yeah.
We put it in the government bucket when we had that
Right. Yeah.
exercise downstairs, so.
Okay, fair enough.
I think, we've taken something from someone else, and I'm trying to see if we can build off of that.
So if we use the words self-sustaining, does that encompass a lot more?
What do you say?
Use the word self-sustaining?
So take out healthy for self-sustaining.
Yeah, if you say self-sustaining, that, most people understand, or they have some vision as to what you mean when you say self-sustaining. I think it encompasses health, safety, and everything else. If it's gonna be self-sustaining, it's got to be survivable, and it's got to encompass every element that creates that notion of sustainability or
I
health.
don't even think we need self, we just put sustainable.
Yes, sustainable, yeah, self-sustaining, sustainable, that's good too, yeah.
Diverse.
Sustainable.
Yeah.
I would also pose if you want anything about economic development. in the
Well, I would
vision.
say prosperous would be a word that pops up a lot. in the
Well, that would be part of
revitalization.
sustainable.
Yeah, I was gonna say
I think
sustainable.
sustainable's a good word.
That's
Yes,
a good
yeah.
word, good one, Chris.
You can go home.
Thank you. Thank you, I will in about 20 minutes.
I'm not even gonna Mike Smith that
So instead of healthy, sustainable,
Right, sustainable, yeah.
Yeah.
support, or
Foster.
sustainability.
Promote,
Fosters,
Foster.
foster, yeah, I like foster.
my word for the day,
Fosters.
Sustainable.
Vibrant and diverse. That covers a lot,
Do we want to say in the Ellicott City watershed area?
yeah.
Yes.
Watershed could start, watershed could
Should,
start.
Gary?
Although I like
should
Ellicott
community
City.
be singular?
Yeah, so South
I feel like
CDC is
it
doing that
implies,
because they have a
like-
lot of neighborhoods.
Yeah,
Yeah. And
Good point.
just, you know, I'm just happy to see Oxford commas, like.
Oh, me too.
Small,
Seriously,
small
man, small
victories.
I was an English major at the
I don't-
University of
See?
Maryland.
Oh, now
Yeah.
it comes out, all
I
right.
know.
They had a great song
I have a
about Oxford
Lucas
comma.
and he's never gonna spell his name right,
Yeah.
because he's gonna always be S apostrophe. Oh, Lord, help us.
Yeah, community development project.
I know, but it's still. It's
I already sent a letter to the school.
Let's go
We will
back
not
to
be doing
Nicholas's
S
comment
apostrophe
about
S.
prosperous,
Sorry,
the word.
never gonna happen.
Is there a place for that word or a word like it? Sustainable, vibrant, diverse?
I think we're saying it right
I
there.
was gonna say, I
What was
think
the other word?
That's what we're
actually
saying.
encompasses prosperous.
Okay. I don't want to make us feel like we're elite with that word.
With
Prosperous,
prosper.
what does that
Yeah.
mean?
Right.
Like only certain kinds of people are.
What's that?
Is it
Prosper, how you missed it?
Where it
the whole
says,
statement?
watershed area through creative community, should
We
we
gotta
say?
fix that word.
Yeah, we
At some
haven't
point,
come
I
back
gotta
yet.
get off my
Right in front of
soapbox.
you.
We also repeating community, which I mentioned to Shannon.
And you all can throw anything at me that you want to when I say this, but I'm like, and this is just me going back to the big Ellicott City picture, because it's Ellicott City CDC, fosters and surveillance, in the Ellicott City watershed area, so it's like the.
So it is communities, isn't it? If it's a whole watershed area.
Is that what you're saying? Communities, or you're saying?
I mean, I think community is a kind of word that
That
can be,
watershed is
Watershed.
Ellicott.
We're calling it the Ellicott City CDC, but it's only covering part of it.
Maybe
well, it could be the Ellicott City Watershed CDC for one.
Right.
I think personally that community can be singular because it's the kind of word that encompasses this sense of a larger unit. It's just a unit of analysis. You can make it as big or small as you want. There are ways to edit out the community, multiple uses of the word community, but
Well, yeah, what follows through is that basically is where you're gonna try and define your tool set in big, broad words, right? That's how you do it. Through reinvestment, revitalization, and partnerships.
that's also not the name of our watershed, is it? So we probably shouldn't have that. Tiber Hudson.
Yeah.
Well, it's not even just Tiber Hudson, New Cut.
Yeah, but isn't that in, like, if you look at a map, isn't the New Cut in there? And isn't the Autumn?
The taps goes in there.
Yeah, because the Dust is at the bottom. I can't remember the Autumn. Is it
These are
Autumn Hill?
tributaries
I can't
to the
remember the name of it.
And the new unknown stream that was not named before 2006. Because never.
That's on the Cat Creek one.
I think that might be. Okay.
They all have one.
It's the one behind Slacks that never.
is that
did
Ed back there?
That's it.
This is not ideal. Let me see if I can find a better one.
It's not bad.
They call it the Tiber Branch watershed.
Well,
Tiber's
that's
only one
separate
part
from the
of it.
Hudson.
No, I'm like, what is the?
Oh, I see what you see on the, up at the
Yeah.
top.
Still looking for a better map.
What would you call it?
the red line.
That's a
around
good
it.
one.
Isn't that it, right there with the red line?
This,
Yeah.
Tiber Hudson watersheds over there.
Yeah.
Tiber Hudson watershed.
I feel like calling it the Ellicott City Water, I mean, if you're trying to get funding outside of the area, though, no one's gonna know what that means.
It
I
sounds
think
just
we're in
separate.
murky water, though. We have multiple watersheds in Ellicott
Murky
City.
water.
But if we say Ellicott City watershed, we're covering everything.
But there's not a
there's-
real place called an Ellicott City watershed.
Right, and then you could, then that, it could extend up to Plumtree. It could, like, I think it's risky using that language, if we're gonna keep that in there, or we just delete that
Well,
part.
That doesn't.
Yeah.
Strike it out.
That's the, is that not the boundaries, or is the
No,
boundary,
it's-
it goes further north on 29?
No, it doesn't. It's too much in there. The Tiber Hudson, the northeast portion of that map, you know, goes into other tributaries that go into the Tapsco. It doesn't go into the Tiber Hudson.
You're right, because my house is on there, and my house drains into
Right.
the
It's
sucker
not
branch.
part of the, it's not part of the,
My house doesn't go to Main Street.
go to the green one, yeah.
That's an open, that green one or the one that was outlined in green?
No, this
That
one.
Okay.
That's it.
Master plan watershed boundary.
There we go.
Right, that's it.
So you just call it the
But
watershed.
it's the Tiber branch.
Tiber branch watershed.
Yeah.
Not the Tiber
See, there's a
Hudson.
little bit that's still wrong with that one.
What does the
but,
language say again? Why, and what,
Because
there's
the
way to
The
Hudson-
get.
Ellicott City
North,
watershed area.
Hudson starts up on St. John.
Hudson's further north.
Yeah.
Can you hold it up there for a second?
Oh, gosh, Gary.
This is 29, this is 40. The Tiber goes through here, Hudson goes in, and then the New Cut goes in just before it gets to Tapsco. But it's, you know, this is the deciding segment of water that we're feeling in Main Street.
Where's the Hudson?
It's.
The middle one.
No, the Hudson.
Yeah, is the middle one?
The Hudson's this way.
Oh, this is the
It
Hudson.
starts up by St. John's, and then the Tiber comes in
Oh.
behind Blackfeet.
This Tiber runs to Blackfeet.
Okay.
And then this is the New Cut.
Yeah, Newcott's in there, which is good.
Yeah. I think that's the.
Yeah, what a lot of people don't realize is that that part of Dunlogan that's on the west side of 29 actually goes through culverts. Goes underneath 29 and drains to Main Street.
That's why
So
there's so
People
many.
don't know that
Southeast-
Walmart's in our
but-
watershed.
Southeast Baltimore doesn't, like when we say Southeast Baltimore, do you know what the boundaries of their CDC are? Yeah, okay, yes, you're an overachiever. But I
No,
mean,
but
most
I
people
mean, I
don't
know
know what
it's
that
not like-
means. So if, even if you could even be more, I mean, you could just say the Ellicott City area in your mission statement and then drill down. I think if you say Tiber Hudson, no one reading this outside of this room is even gonna know what that means.
Right.
We had to have people go up to the road thing and point out which one was which, and we still got confused.
And people working on this for how many
Half
years?
the people were on the phone.
Listen, somebody should
Well,
talk
if-
to
if
Howard
you-
County about labeling this.
Bring it down a little bit. Well, right there. This is Church Road right here. All of this drains to Main Street because it drains to Church Road and follows Church Road all the way down.
Comes pouring down in front of the
Down the
old
street.
firehouse.
Yeah, so all of the water from here flows all the way down and cuts through the backyard, side yard of this house, and that's what goes into the back of the, of Cocoa, where Cocoa Lane was. That's what was flooding them out, is actually all of this. So even this isn't quite accurate. And they know
Well,
this.
it's following the topography probably, but
Yeah.
the road has interrupted that and it's drawing the
Right,
water
the road becomes
into
the
the curves.
best swell in the world for diverting the Main Street.
So back to the language. What would you say the Ellicott City area, and then really define it down by you say we work in the specific, what, like when you actually get into where we work. You would say we work within the established boundaries of the Tiber Hudson watershed, and you would have a link on your website that would show the map to show you exactly where that
So
is.
should we have a section of where we work?
It's the historic district.
Yes, I think.
Yeah, I mean, that's
Should be an
basically your
addendum.
Yeah, but then if
geographic.
you're not in the historic, that.
But we have a
Oh.
boundary
No, what I'm saying, if we call it the
description
historic
already,
district
too.
watershed.
No, I know, so you would, that's
Oh,
just
yeah.
drill
Drill down in
down.
that section.
Yeah.
So that map.
See, Chris?
See you guys.
It needs to have a new name, it's the historic district watershed.
Nobody knows what that.
Exactly.
But it's actually beyond the historic district boundaries too.
Yeah.
So I had thrown out through, and I'm not wedded to this, I'm just throwing it out to get the conversation moving. Reinvestment through, reinvestment, revitalization, and partnerships.
Where would you come from?
Like through. 'cause
Instead of
those-
creative,
After
creative
through is not our language.
No.
Right?
I think it's,
Then you
that
want
is
to add.
definitely
Can you?
a little narrower than the universe. I mean, that's definitely better.
Can we add?
You could do reinvestment.
Through reinvestment.
What did you say?
I said reinvestment, revitalization, and partnerships.
That's good.
That's
That's
just,
what this is about. Good. That's good. It's nice.
One thing, I mean.
I get rid of the first bullet.
Well, that,
I'm
it just
kidding.
describes it.
that's just the structure, then that goes someplace else.
Although that to me is a footnote, but also there needs to be some footnote about community development organizations. Because if we're saying CDO or CD, whatever,
You can decide one way or another which one you want.
yeah.
I thought if we used the CDC acronym that we had to follow the HUD thing. Is that
You do.
not right?
It's true. Well, you don't have to, but it really only means anything if you're doing HUD.
So are we doing a CDO?
Let's go through the.
We could kick that can down the road
Yeah.
and let the council decide. Let them have both structures, you know, either giving the council and the county executive the flexibility to decide that entity decision.
Should we make
No,
that
we're not.
recommendation?
I didn't
Yeah,
think this
make
was
a
going
choice.
before the council, is it? I
Well,
thought this was
it's-
going before the,
Executive.
Exactly.
I think you guys have to decide.
I think I do too.
So CDC would make more sense, wouldn't it? Or CDO, I'm sorry, CDO.
I think we
Just
need
based
to.
on Odette's presentation, a CDO seems to make more sense.
Yes.
Right,
It did.
because it allows them
I
to
thought that's
partner
what
with
we all
more.
India, I think we all agreed that
Yeah.
it did make more sense, CBO, so we'll just change that.
I just don't know if I just don't know if this organization needs to meet all of the demands of HUD to get that, like,
And actually,
There
what
could
you
be-
may end up doing is you may, you could always, if for some reason you wanted to take advantage of that funding through HUD, you might change the actual incorporation of the organization to be a CDC, but still just call yourself a
That's
CDO,
right.
or you may not ever really, you may, that's the other question too I had, which is, do we really want to call this the Ellicott City CDO? The organization may at some point decide to call themselves something different, right? I mean, you could easily be Main Street Ellicott City, but you decided not to be.
Right. Yeah,
That
we-
was-
and are doing business
What was our
as,
old
we're the
acronym?
Ellicott City Historic District Partnership is they're doing business as.
Right, but you don't call yourselves
But we
that.
don't call ourselves that.
So there might be.
So
at
there's
some
tax
point-
documents and then there's your whatever you want
Right.
to call it.
So the organization may at some point decide from a branding perspective to call themselves something different.
Makes sense.
One thing that I'll throw out there, and I know we're like not about specific maps, but Ellicott City's huge, right? I mean,
Oh, the
it's
post
way bigger than,
office?
no, the whole, just the 21043 is or plus all of its, I don't think.
post office.
So when we say like in the Ellicott City area, I mean, there are gonna be a lot of people who are like, and I'm not trying to get us back to the map, I just mean like, let's not forget, this is a really big,
Mhm.
just,
Yeah.
whereas I do think we're focused a little bit more narrowly, whether it's map number 1, 2, 3, or 4, there are parts of Ellicott City that we're not, I don't think any of us are focused on.
Should that be in there?
Here,
It needs to be somewhere in the,
Somewhere in
there
there.
needs to be something in the, and again, it doesn't have to be in this bullet,
No.
but somewhere, footnote number 1 or whatever needs to
To
describe the
narrow it
catchment
down,
area.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
okay.
yeah. I agree with that. Because people will look at it.
Are we okay with
broad
this
and go,
mission statement? So this will probably move up top on above everything, and the bullet above it, which talks about the 501c3 structure, will probably fall someplace under the scope of work, perhaps, section. Or maybe we just get rid of it, because we do need to acknowledge what we do under the activity scope of work, that we are going to structure as a 501c3. So maybe we just take that community development corps or 501c3s, that's just kind of informational. I don't think that's really adding anything.
It'd be good to save it for whatever you're gonna end up writing. For whomever is gonna end up writing something for council, or for, I am. Is that you might wanna have that language just as like a preface or something.
I think we should have Mike smooth it.
I think we should.
That's true, I did. Third time I leave the room.
Crowd's getting tough again.
Okay. The next packet of things, I think, is the how can we ensure the CDO interacts with existing organizations and county government. We've not looked at these things, so maybe we could start with this now, and we can deal with some structure of all of these bullets a little bit later or next week. But any conversation, discussion about those two bullets that are suggested?
Yes, S apostrophe, because I'm that guy. Can't help it, it's the PhD. First bullet, existing organizations, S apostrophe. Nope, S, logo. Hey, it's, gotta get it right.
It's gonna be. All right, first bullet's okay, second bullet, to ensure an interaction, coordination, and representation, a representative from ECP and other identified watershed area groups will be appointed to the board of directors of the CEO.
Can we take out watersheds and it's not mentioned?
No, because I think you're gonna have it somewhere in the geographic boundaries. I mean, I think you're gonna have something to reference back to it.
Okay.
That's my time. I'm not, anybody can object to that.
So are you comfortable with ECP and other identified watershed areas?
I think you should identify some others. If you're gonna identify one, you should
Yeah.
identify others that you think.
I would do an EG list, for example.
And what would those be?
Well, Patapsco Heritage Greenway, EDA.
Baltimore County.
I don't think Baltimore County's gonna be on the board, right?
Oh, no, I'm sorry, not on the board.
I don't think we're recording.
Not on the board. My apologies.
Patapsco Heritage
Wait,
Greenway.
this isn't the board though, this is existing
Well,
boards, right?
Yeah, it would be appointed to the board of directors.
Yeah, so we are referencing the board.
Got it, sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry,
I missed that last time.
it's in the wrong bucket.
It was.
And let me ask you
Brooke,
that,
Howard, Eco Works.
does that make the most sense to appoint him to the board? Because you have, like, if I was in a situation where I had to have representatives of other organizations who, at the end of the day, their primary interest in mission is in supporting their organization and the mission of their organization, on my board, there's less likelihood for them to be giving significantly. There's more likelihood, I mean, realistically, for them kind of defending their turf and keeping us from doing certain things that they worry about. I think it makes sense to have an advisory board that has to exist, but I think hamstringing an organization by requiring them to have certain board representatives. I've also seen the other side of this too, where I was on a board in Frederick County where we had to have somebody from the Farm Bureau, and the Farm Bureau never would send anybody, or the person they sent just never wanted to come. And then there was always just an issue with getting quorum, and well, Farm Bureau person is never here, it's just an empty seat. And you could end up in a situation with both of those. I think it's concerning to suggest that we're gonna say that they have to have this people on their board. I think require them to have an advisory board that gets an opportunity to, do certain number of things or be advised
Well,
of
it's
certain
part
things.
of the coordination,
Right.
is the advisory, and they have those discussions.
But I think
Like
prescribing
the
their-
Ellicott City's going to have an advisory board with 24 to 30 people, because there's so many different organizations. So
Right. Because what if they want to set
that
a,
process is different than what you need for a board of directors for this organization. It needs to be lean and know what they're talking about.
it also hamstrings them if they want, and from a fundraising perspective, because what if they want to set a, board giving minimum of $5,000? And so,
Yeah.
So should we not, instead of being that EG list being so long, should we make it shorter? So that we know that somebody like the ECP is going to be on there. Would the Heritage Greenway be better fit for the advisory board?
I think you could make the long list
I would suggest.
for for the advisory, I think if you're talking about this being for the advisory board, but I think prescribing the makeup of an organization's board by other organizations from an executive director standpoint is a concerning precedent.
You're hobbling it before it gets off the ground because of the possibility.
I think this organization, the CDO, needs a strong executive, needs a board. It doesn't need a strong board.
I think it does.
I think having a strong board is a good thing. I mean, I think,
Well-
but we're getting into nonprofit management. I mean, a strong board can mean different things. It doesn't mean that they're in the way. It can just mean that they're being very supportive in other ways, or opening doors, or financially supportive. I think having a strong board is good, but I'm more concerned about prescribing who sits on that board. We may want to suggest a list of types of people who should be on that board. Somebody from an economic development organization, somebody from blank, blank, blank.
We do that in the next section.
Right. So that I don't. But I
You
think
may have a rotating,
I think identifying
membership, too.
I think identifying the membership of an advisory board would be good.
So that's on the table, discussion. Advisory board as opposed to being specific at this level about who is comprised of the board of directors. And I do want to point out to the follow-on section where it really addresses, to Nicholas's point, the backgrounds. These are people that have business, economic development,
Right.
Community building kind of backgrounds. Those are the folks that we'd like to see populate board without being terribly specific.
So I mean, all of that, there's almost no reason in the bullet above that we were just messing with if this stuff stays in there. I think one of the things that, and I hear you, Nick, obviously that there are pros and cons from a nonprofit management perspective. Now, we've spoken for the past probably well over a month about, we're going to have certain entities on this board, and that satisfies the political realities of making sure, and it's not, I don't even think it's about turf protection. I think it's, if we want to make sure that no one's duplicating efforts, it's good to have folks on the board. I hear what you're saying about advisory, but advisory is great in that as a board you can ignore them, but I don't know that that would be the right thing in this case, right?
I don't think, if it's done correctly, I don't think they'll be able to ignore them. But I do believe there's two boards. I believe there's an advisory and there's a board for doing business. And it may be part of the responsibility of whoever becomes the director for the organization. If they organize it the way they make a proposal how to organize it. Because this is going to be creative, out of nothing. And, if you get the right talent,
It depends how
the
it's
ability
created,
to how
too.
to say how to
Yeah.
structure it
I just
means a
look-
lot.
I look, why an advisory board first, and then the composition, what's their role?
So
I mean, I've-
play.
Because I've seen that advisory boards get stronger than the board of directors, depending on the selection. So, if you're gonna go that route, to
One of the
me,
things that came up in our earlier conversations was, I'll use two words, transparency and communication. And I think a lot of what the local communities were feeling was that they were not being able to get their voices heard readily, and they weren't being communicated back to, whereas I think, to me, I almost see that's what the.
will that go through the
board-
advisory board, or,
Right.
I mean, how it's structured and defined, and the composition and what their roles would be?
And it's something that an advisory board may meet once or twice a year,
Okay.
So-
whereas a board should be meeting
Yeah,
at least.
I got it then.
My concern, like to be totally candid, is that if you end up with an organization that the board is comprised of people who represent, their primary interest is another organization. This isn't always the case, but sometimes they may not have the best interest of this other organization at heart. Perhaps they're on that board just because they don't want to see this organization grow, or they don't want to see it, they're concerned about turf war, and they perceive everything that this organization does. And I'm not suggesting ECP, I want to make that abundantly clear, because I don't think that would be the case, but I feel like we know a lot about ECP, and Matt has been here and has been a good player in all of this. We don't know about some of these other groups that we could be potentially just like throwing someone on this board and have no idea what that could mean for the organization.
You're talking about the advisory board?
I'm talking about a real board.
No,
So
I don't believe it.
I think that the reason I suggest having an advisory board is because it is a affirmative sort of like movement towards suggesting that we want there to be partnership. We want there to be a clear sense that this organization is going to be partnering with other organizations, and that we're taking a proactive step towards doing that, but not at the expense of preordaining the board and board leadership. And maybe you don't want a really big board to start either. Maybe you want to have 5 people to get the organization off the ground, because 5 people can make a decision a lot faster. You can get them together faster. You can have a quorum immediately, and maybe you grow that out to be a 25-person board in 5 years. But maybe, and so by preordaining the board at this point, you're also sort of prescribing the number as well.
But it's a small universe of people who would be board candidates, because the universe of what this entity is going to be addressing isn't large, it's not massive. So I think it's a small board. I agree with Nicholas. I don't know if we're getting redundant to have an advisory board on top of or adjacent to the board of directors.
I think you need an advisory board because part of the mission is to collaborate, and that's how you get everybody to the table and have discussions with Gary. It's a,
To Matt's earlier point, the political reality, the political reality is the board's largely going to be drawn from the people who care about the district and the watershed area.
the PHG has an advisory board and has board of directors.
As well.
I don't know where it's at the moment, but originally the board of directors was it was too large. They had 24 people on a board. You can't make decisions and meander. The advisory board, there is a long list of organizations in Ellicott City. And, meet once or twice a year with those people and communicate, coordinate, whatever. And if there's a need, sometimes, you accelerate that process.
But that goes back to Charles's point, if you're making the advisory board strictly communications and transparency. I'm saying, okay, define the role for that advisory board. What do they advise, and what is
Well,
their
it's
specific
a
mandate?
two-way street. It's not just downward communication.
It's upward
also
too,
upward
yeah,
communication.
yeah.
So that's where all those groups that we had coming to testify and speak, they're all being able to take their input. So you're able to, the CDO board is able to come out and say, this is what we're looking at, this is our proposed plan, and then the advisory board is able to go back, take that to their constituents, come back and give them their comments. It doesn't make them binding comments, but at least it gives everybody the ability to have that feel of ownership that we put our input in, whereas that was lacking in the last process.
It's a means of making your agenda, getting it to the community.
We have a resource sitting here at this table that has been through every iteration of organizational structure in Ellicott City that I can think of. And I'd love to have, without drawing too much attention to the man sitting to my left, opine a little bit for all of us, because you've been through, Ed, all the storms, all the discussions, all the conversations. How would it work best? As you've been a party to all of the entities, directly and indirectly, I think. What do you think would work best?
Don't blame me.
I'm not. But how can we learn from your experience? What would you suggest here?
I don't think you can exist without an advisory board, in my opinion.
And
Every organization I've ever belonged to has had an advisory board, and that's to get other input. So I agree that you don't want a 25-person board, because it's just going to be too long to deal with. But I think you need to hear the voices of all the other organizations that are interested, because that was the whole thing. This thing is, transparency is the word. And they're all going to be saying, well, wait a minute, where does our voice come in? And I guess you can say, well, you can come to a meeting and talk if you want, but you're going to have long meetings, whereas if it's organized into an advisory board, that's where the input is, and then that gets sent to the board.
But that's very clear and specifics on that whole process, what they do, is what I'm getting at. If that's the advisory board, then their role should be clearly defined, to have that
We can define.
two-way
Yeah.
conversation,
define it.
two-way
Yeah,
communication.
advisory board,
So I'm comfortable with that,
Yeah, I think I'm comfortable with that idea too. If we have a board of directors, we have characteristics we have described here about who should comprise that board of directors, and we can work on those characteristics. And that would be the executive, the council's role to find the people that fit those characteristics. But we have a way to keep all of the entities, to Nicholas's point, that are part of the fabric of Ellicott City engaged on an advisory basis, if not, in fact, by being appointed ultimately to the board of directors. We're not precluding someone who represents an organization from being on the board of directors, as long as they can bring these skills, to that level of engagement.
Yeah, I think that the description of the board of directors should be more of a description of attributes than a description of actual entities.
Okay, so
I agree.
we have an advisory board, and we have a board of directors.
So how do you want to say that? To ensure interaction, coordination,
Our board of directors, the advisory board could have those direct entities, such as.
to ensure interaction, coordination,
Yeah.
and transparency.
Yeah.
An advisory board shall be established.
Here's a list, and not limited to.
Yeah.
Advise.
That will do
That will advise the board of directors.
Well, I think she's saying, we'll advise the board of directors.
Yeah, that's really what it's doing, right?
It will include, it should include, I mean, that's gonna be up to to some extent, the executive director is gonna, they're gonna set the agenda, and, you might have a chair of the advisory board, and they're gonna come up with the agenda. I mean, it's just like asking the question what the board's gonna do. Is it gonna be a fundraising board? Is it gonna be a working board? Is it gonna be a governing board?
Those are.
But I don't think we prescribe what kind of board it's gonna be.
Well, those could become committees of, I think.
Right.
Should we say an advisory board consisting of
Yeah.
the following groups? Do we want to be prescriptive in terms of who those groups should be? Or an advisory board consisting of the organizations that currently or in the future will play a role in the evolution of Ellicott City watershed? I'm just throwing words out. That's what I think.
Maybe consisting of, but not limited to.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Organizations concerned with, I'm just saying that.
Well, do you,
Could be
your,
anybody
your
under
your
the
point,
sun.
Charles,
Yeah.
what you just said, should those people be aligned with the mission and vision? Those organizations, I'm just,
They should,
they should.
yeah.
But they
We're
might
not
have
I
gonna-
mean, I may have a name, but
Of whose mission?
of
I don't
how,
want,
of the mission here.
Oh,
I want
no, I
to go
don't
back to
think so.
diversity of thought.
Yeah, I don't think that that's necessary for you. That's kind of what the beauty of the advisory board is. You can have people on there that you may not otherwise have on your actual board, but you have them there because you want to hear what they have to say. So you might have the Home Builders Association as on that board. They may not.
Maryland does, actually. Ellicott City does.
But it might be homeowners association.
Or homeowners
Well, we have
association.
Church
Someone who
Road
would
has
get
an
thoughts.
association.
There's multiple.
Right, there are many. I mean, Ellicott City has many homeowners.
And the thing is, that's the whole idea of the transparency, is you want to hear the opposing views. You can
Right.
hammer it all out and come to an
You just may
agreement.
not want to have them making your decisions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
But you want those voices
You
to be
want
heard by
input.
people who are
You want
making
input.
decisions.
Okay.
Yeah.
And in reverse, when you're the CEO, you're building a constituency through your advisory board. It's a tool.
That's how implementation happens.
Okay.
They buy in. That's what we're hoping for here.
Yeah.
So an advisory board consisting of, do we want to go back there to that part of the clause? Do we want to say something about consisting of
Representatives from.
existing and,
Well, I mean, she has the advisory board will consist of, but not limited to, representatives from, and then you could list out local organizations.
attached to the Heritage Greenway, neighborhood associations?
I mean,
I'm just trying to broaden it,
HOAs.
not being too prescriptive.
I was trying to be really broad and just say local organizations, because that's kind of, that if you say local organizations, that becomes all encompassing.
Okay, I can live with that.
Back to your point of how broad, as far as the posters that go, how far do you want to
But
go?
what if
along?
people aren't, Charles, what if people aren't organized? In other words, local organizations to me
Yeah.
might mean ECPs and, groups that clearly are well organized. But what if it's a loose alliance of people on the west end who are neighbors and?
Yeah,
and-
that aren't
They
necessarily
have an
incorporated.
association.
What about Ellicott City stakeholders?
Yeah, yeah, that sounds good.
I know it's a little, I don't know.
I'm sorry, but I bristle at the term stakeholder because of
Absolutely.
all of the mudslinging that went on over that terminology.
Just throwing stuff out there.
Oh.
We need to throw.
Going to buy.
I don't think we can work it out who it is now. I just think we make.
Yeah, but isn't that our job? Let's say tomorrow, we're like, here you go, Dr. Ball. And a woman in California calls and says, I've been watching this closely and I'm really interested, but I don't know who any of your local organizations are. We just set them back 3 months trying to build these relationships. Like, isn't that our job, is to try to be as, like, we're writing the instruction manual for 1,000-piece Lego kit, and we can't give 10 instructions.
So it could be local organizations such as ECP and others to be defined. I mean,
And not limited
UCP would be happy to be on the board
such
as well.
as,
Can,
not
can we
Just
set
saying.
some sort of a parameter?
Well, no, so
I think
I
that,
mean, you can-
I
That's
think-
why I was trying not to put you in that
But
bucket.
can we
Well,
set some,
and I agree with that.
can we
Sorry.
set some sort of parameter with regard to the organizations in terms of their organizational structure that at least provides us some level of this organization has some teeth to it? I don't know what that might look like. Is it, do they have to be a 501c3? Do they have to be some sort of,
I think we're good, but I don't know if you need to be that detailed.
Not for the advisory
I'm
board.
afraid
I
we
mean,
might get
like,
too far in the weeds.
Yeah.
You know, the West
They may
End,
exclude people that don't have the wherewithal to form, but they have opinions and they have a voice, and people look to that voice and say, that is someone who speaks from my perspective. So I don't know how to.
even if they're unestablished?
Yeah, but
well,
I think
well, I mean,
if
if you think
if
about
say
some of
but
the
not
relief
with-
that happened during the flood,
Mhm.
some of the groups that got together there, they called themselves an organization, but none of them have filed paperwork to become a 501c3. They were just a loose affiliation.
I was just
but-
shooting that out as an example of some sort of parameter.
I also think you
That's all.
might not want to list them by
But
name
not
here,
limited to.
because if they then end up, one of these groups ends up having a representative on the actual board, it might be weird for us to have called them out here as being on the advisory board. So why couldn't you just say, consist of but not limited to representatives from local organizations, community advocates, and key stakeholders? And
Because
just
if
leave
you
it up
make a
to the.
list, it's already, you'll
You're
leave
gonna leave
somebody out.
somebody out and they're gonna be pissed.
And you're,
Yeah.
Or put
Already.
somebody in and
yeah.
on the wrong, yeah.
Community organizations. Right. And Nicholas suggested other stakeholders. Sorry, Charles.
I guess,
We can work
It's a great
this
word.
later, but we're
It's
just
like-
trying to get the concept out there now.
So I think the rest of it you can kill.
Somebody said advocate, but local organizations, community advocates, I thought it was advocates.
Oh, yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna throw this out here. I think that we need to have somebody from the ECP be on this board. I think that needs to be like an identifiable thing, because they're your relationship builder.
Does someone from this board have to be on the ECP?
Which board are you talking about?
ECP's board.
I don't see why
ECP's
not.
board.
I mean, don't we have board sharing with, Visit Ellicott City too? Or,
Yeah, we have, so we have ex officio, tourism, EDA, and.
Ex officio.
I think you're getting on my nerves.
planning and zoning.
Yeah, but
That's okay, they still have a voice, they're still at every
yeah,
meeting.
that might as well just be it's just an advisory position that meets with them. If you want,
Her Sue would suggest they both have a seat on the board of each other. This just keeps it at a high level. And then we talk about the characteristics of the experience sets, the skill sets we're trying to find for the board members.
but I don't think we should leave that question on the table. I mean, whether it should be ex officio, whether it should be an actual position or board shared position. But I think if it's good for ECP to be on this board, then it's probably good for someone on that board to be on the ECP board.
I think you need to have a discussion about who needs to be on the board, and then you can, because it's to me two different, you do sort of do
Well,
two
right,
different-
this now is a sentence about the advisory board, so it shouldn't be there at all.
Right,
But I think
right,
it's in the
right.
next
No, I
part we're
agree.
gonna hit anyway.
Yeah, yeah.
Don't we need we mentioned advisory board, don't we also need to mention just the governing board?
That's the
That's the next
next thing.
section.
That is the board.
Create a board of directors.
Okay.
Could we use capital A on advisory board? It's just
Maybe.
maybe, yeah. It's-
But it's kind of random
It's all
caps.
down the ship.
Shana, you and I are talking. But it's not a name.
It's not a proper name.
not- yeah.
but
But it's going to
And
be
advisory
a
board.
recognized thing associated with the
Not
Nah.
a proper name, but we can do
Can we make it blue?
Italicized.
We can move on.
Ouch.
We can move on.
Oh, boy.
Okay, structure staffing, just do a quick time check.
Go Shana. Nerds unite.
Oh, my God. The
Okay.
Leinster.
Create a board of directors responsible.
No, I'm totally with her. I'm on the same page.
Hey,
Create a board of directors responsible for hiring an ED and records.
That's right.
And ratifying the director's subsequent staffing recommendations. Touche.
Do you,
Brutal.
so this first bullet, or not first bullet, second bullet, the board will be appointed by the county executive and the county council.
Is that true?
Well,
Is that
I
how
think
we-
that that's a debatable question right there, and, well, or perhaps the county executive and the council get so many appointments, and
Right.
that some of them are self, so the board then appoints as well. I think that's good, so that there's always kind of a mix, because you could end up with a lot of different things politically.
They wouldn't be jointly appointed.
No, they would be sort
Like
of
the
like
council
staggered
would get some,
positions,
maybe county executive would
We
get
divide
some.
it up.
and then the board would get some as well. Debate it, I mean,
I like
you could say, tough thing in doing that is that you kind of have to know how many positions you're going to have, so you
Yeah,
know how many
seats.
slots to give out.
Or what those positions are, you know, Charles saying, they have skill sets. This is.
Yeah, but you don't want to
actually-
prescribe like the county executive has to appoint a business person.
Right.
Yes.
You do?
Oh, no.
Oh, that's what I'm saying.
But what if you said it's just a portion between the county executive and the county council, without saying how many board members there are? So there's a number that will be defined. I don't know, Shana, you can help me if we have to define a number now, or we punt on that, and it's just a portion between the appointments between the county executive and the county council. And perhaps there's a third bucket that would be
Self-appointed by the board.
self-appointed by the board members, but then so the board members are selected by the council and the exec.
I mean, it's only, once you're up and running, then the board should be, I mean, you could have these, county appointed, but once an organization is good to go, then the board works with the nominations committee to,
I think
Well,
there-
it could be in this situation where you're right in 99% of the time, but if there's any ongoing government funding or they want to have a controlling interest in the organization in the long term, then Howard County may want to be in a position to nominate or to be in charge of some of that nomination.
I still think that you could say the county executive and county council would always get 6 spots or something, and of 12 or of 13 or whatever, you know?
That's what we're saying, so we just have to decide if we want to prescribe the number of board members.
Yeah, less than.
Or
5 board members.
At least
Five board members.
Yes.
5.
not 25.
No,
Right.
5.
How about 13?
No.
No,
Did
lucky
we find
number.
enough people?
It needs to be odd.
Yeah, how
I
about
think it should
9?
be 5, 7.
Needs to be odd, and you've got 6 right there.
Yeah.
How about
5
9?
council plus the county executive.
Well, okay, so to.
Unless you actually want the county council to like, not each be able to get 1. which makes more
That's
sense.
where I was going, was what if you gave the county executive 1 and the board gets 2, and so they have to collaborate
The
on
council.
those 2, the county council.
Council.
So the council would get more than the county executive?
Well, think about the number of people who are on the county council. Yeah, say he gets 1 direct one, and they have to collaborate on their choice of 2, so that gets
Charles,
3.
I don't think that's
I
gonna.
don't know. I was trying to limit it to 5.
Well,
To your point
I think
of
5 is.
5 is too
That's a
small.
really
I'm
small-
thinking
I'm
ideal
just
It
thinking
9.
depends on what the board is
I like
doing.
nine.
What do you
Right.
envision the
9.
board
Or
doing?
11?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Seven.
I like
See,
that.
see, lean and mean, that's,
so if each council member had 1, that's 5. The exec should have at least as many, almost as the council. I'm looking at Shana intently here. Or pursue, or no?
I mean, I think 5 for the council seems like a
Lot.
lot. If we're talking about a 9-person board.
So maybe 3 for the council, 5 from the exec, and 3 from the other category?
I mean, I think to Matt's point, there's a difference between I don't know. It's up to you guys to determine, but I mean, in the beginning, obviously, most of it has to come from the council and the county executive, but then, like Matt said, there's a process that most boards operate under where the board itself nominates, and to ensure a voice, you have different organizations. Like, for instance, when the state creates committees through legislation, or they create task forces, it's like
The speaker gets
the
1.
speaker gets 1, the senate president gets 1, the governor gets 1, and then they prescribe 1 from a business organization, 1 from a transit organization, 1 from a whatever, you know?
Who actually, it depends each time who appoints those though, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's normally up to the chair
The chair, right?
of that.
The strongest, I was a consultant, the strongest organizations were very lean. Most of the time, they were just responsible to the mayor, the executive, they were not responsible to the board. I just put that out there.
it's one of the things I feared greatest, going back to the conversation we had a couple weeks ago about creating a leadership role or creating, getting to a point where they were trusted is, if they're getting into an analysis paralysis right from the get-go, the larger your board is, the longer it's going to take to get to consensus. And so the idea of putting 3 together for the entire council was so that the council has to come to their consensus about who these 3 people are, and they put those forward, and then so you keep the board smaller so that they can get the work done faster, more nimble.
I envision the board advising the executive director. The executive director comes up with an agenda, pursues that agenda, and he gets advice from, and assistance where necessary, from board. It's not the board coming together and saying, well, let's do this or let's do this. It's a strong director that
The board is there in support of the director, not the director in support of the board.
exactly.
Right.
That
Okay.
is a big
Got it.
difference.
Right.
Yes.
Typically, an executive director goes up under a board.
Pardon?
Typically, an executive director reports to the board.
Yes.
But the board is really more
Not
of checks and
necessarily.
balances for the
Necessarily.
exec, don't you think?
I mean, I think in, common use, like in the nonprofit world, in the for-profit world, if you're publicly traded, there's a board,
Yeah.
there's a CEO. The CEO reports to the board.
Yeah,
I'm
I
not
think-
saying that you can't have a board that is friendly and supportive of the CEO, as opposed to adversarial, but in general, I don't think we want to forget that There's a board
Yeah,
under which an executive director sits,
Yeah.
under which the staff sits.
yeah.
No, I think it's the opposite. I think you're going to have an executive director with a board, or you aren't going to get anything done.
I'm talking about,
I
that's,
don't function in that.
yeah, like,
I've never been
I've
part of an
never worked in that.
organization that works like that.
Yeah, they don't, the board doesn't report to the executive director.
no, the executive,
You know, I think they're.
Because the hiring is done by the board.
The executive director reports to the board.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
serve at the board's pleasure.
Yeah.
They're hired by the board.
Yeah.
The executive director is hired by the board.
Yeah.
He can't then turn around and say, okay, now you all work for me, and dictate things. He has to negotiate. He or she, I should say, excuse me, needs to be in a position where they articulate the vision
Yeah.
and get the board's
This
buy-in to the
job
vision.
is going to require day-by-day initiatives. You
Right.
have the board come together every day?
No,
No,
the
no,
board
no,
meets
no.
on a whatever basis, a monthly
Monthly or
basis or whatever it
quarterly.
is. Just like how I work in the private sector, Gary. I have a board of directors, I'm responsible to them. They bless what I do. And that happens regularly. And not on a daily basis, but we have a business plan, and I have to report
Yeah.
on my progress in the business
Yeah.
plan.
Right.
That, to me, is how it works.
Yeah.
At an
The
ED
board
level,
is where you're
relative to a board.
accountable to them.
Yeah.
It's the checks and balances for
Serve
the
at their
cases.
pleasure.
You can't just- Exactly.
They have hiring and firing capability.
Well, that CEO, yeah. I mean,
Right.
I come out of that sector.
Ask
Yeah,
Steve
right,
Jobs.
that's the way
That's
it's
it.
done.
I reported to a board.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So we wanna
On
make sure the
private
board
sector
is-
side. Yeah.
I think, to me, the big mission, the challenge is creating a board that's, they have the skill sets, the experience,
Yeah.
where they can be a sounding board. They can help guide and buffer and contain the energy and focus the energy of a great executive director on the mission of the organization. I think, to me, that's how this works well. And that board has to be something that's politically viable, because it's born out of a political context with appointments made by elected officials. And we give them the opportunity to select the board members. We're not sitting here prescriptively saying, it's this person, it's going to be Mike Smith on that board. No, that doesn't work for me.
So we need to decide how many people we want on the board and who gets to appoint them.
Yeah, but 7 or 9, 11 gets a little big. It can
I mean,
grow.
we could technically say, you know, it should be an odd number, not to exceed whatever, but more than, you
And then
know.
you could go 3/5 of it are appointed by Matt every
A lot of
time.
bylaws. will
Shane will
say
be in
not to
there.
exceed a particular number.
Carry in the
That's
one.
really-
Yeah.
Move the-
7 of them.
Carry the dust.
I-
Unless three-fifths goes
Yeah.
with the.
I think eliminating the size is
Yeah,
fine
and I
because
do by the idea, odd number.
It has to be.
Yeah,
It has to be an
yeah,
odd number.
that's a
Gotta be an odd
given.
number.
But
Yeah.
Shane, a little help on this. I mean, what do you think would fly? I mean, you're as close to the flame, perhaps more so than anybody in this room. Council and/or county exec, what should be the ratio? And I'm not trying to put you on the spot with this, but can you give us some help in terms of how this, do you want to end up with a recommendation that has support? Not something that's too far afield from the realities of politics and life here in Howard County, Ellicott City.
I mean, I can't prescribe, I can't speak for the county executive in terms of what he would want to see, but in my opinion, the executive should have at least the same or more than the council in terms of appointments.
What's been the history because other boards like the liquor board or whatever, has that been the same where the county executive or the council has more? I just use the liquor board, but it could be some
What
other
about this?
boards.
Who appointed who here?
The council each got one, each council person got one, and the county executive appointed everyone else. So there are 17 of you that were appointed, so the council got 5, and the executive got 12.
So if you did
So someone do
three
the
for
rough
the
math on that, I'm
executive,
not, I can't do that.
if you did three
Oh,
for the
sorry.
17.
Numbers again?
Somebody who could-
5 over 17.
Yeah.
Right?
So if you did 3 for the executive and 3 for the council, and then added 1 more to that from someplace else, that gets you to 7.
And there is a challenge with saying that to the, just a political reality,
Sure.
saying to the council, you don't get to each appoint one.
Nicholas,
If you're trying to get them to
Two-thirds.
agree on 3, I'm just saying, I think that's gonna be it.
Yeah.
But Ellicott City's not in their districts. Why do you?
Why are people around the table who are not? I mean,
Yeah.
I don't disagree with that, but then it should be 1.
And all
then
of
it's
how-
District 1 or whatever.
And if there's county investment going into Ellicott City.
That's exactly
there
right.
is,
Yeah.
right? And
So I
everybody's
think you
paying
go
for it.
5 on the
Yes.
council, and if you have to, I mean, why not follow this? I mean, if you
Yeah.
really want a simple model.
So this model is 2/3, 1/3. 2/3 of this group was appointed by the county exec, 1/3 by the council members. If we said 9 or 7, I think it should be more than 5.
What if you did 9 and then you had, and then another 3, another 4 appointed by the board itself, so you get to 13?
Mhm.
Big numbers.
No,
13 was not low or sleep. Like, I took that out and
It
he
was
was
like,
like,
oh, gosh.
She said 13 to
I
start.
did, I
I
know.
know,
Like,
yeah.
very quickly,
Ugh.
down at the end of the table. No.
Some of us
Look-
have sat
look
in
at-
meetings with that.
But what
before,
if
and
it's,
like-
what if the
Just look
county
at-
executive has 2 and the council has 2, and then that leaves 5 for,
I feel like the county, what we're hearing is the county exec needs that more than the council.
I think that's
And
gonna get
also
an
with
expiration date though,
The
like,
council coming up with 2 and there's 5 of them?
I don't think
Well,
that's a
that's-
recipe for success.
I don't think that would, yeah, I mean, you
What
could
would
end
be?
up.
What's that
I don't
again?
think having the county council, 5 people pick 2 winning horses is gonna be a recipe for success at all.
That's true.
Yeah, it is bad.
That's tough.
Bad
right?
news.
It's hard to get consensus, so.
Right.
Right.
No pun intended,
Alright.
make one make it square.
Looking at 5 and they can-
You know, you have to be 5 from the exec.
5 from the county.
well, that'd be
Does it have
6.
We're back to 13.
You're
That's
right.
11.
If
have to be
you
5
do
from the
5
county
and 5,
executive.
that's 10.
That's 10. And then you've got to have,
And you add 1 more, that's 11.
right, or
I'm sure
those
you've got
10
some people on the
select
county
3 other board members.
on the council.
Get
So-
the magic.
Here's
Wayne
the
has
alcoholic
way more than
beverage
others,
hearing
if not
board.
most of
My
them.
favorite board.
It consists of 5 members,
I just said.
5 members appointed by the executive and confirmed by the county council.
I think that's the way it should
So
be. With their, the executive
So he appoints,
chooses,
they
and they're
confirm.
confirmed by the council.
That works.
Yeah.
that's
It's,
how the-
in the beginning, it wants to be lean.
That's
Yeah.
kind of hot.
The county exec picks 5, and then the council has to approve
Confirms
those
them.
5. I mean, so there is a vetting process and a buying
Yeah.
process as well.
Right.
So you don't have to do the
Spending
initiative.
force.
Are we staying with 9?
Well, and then, okay, so that gives us, to get to the magic number 4, that would, I mean, to get to the magic number 9, you would still have 4 left, or do you want to just keep it at 5 to start?
No, we can't, I'm wondering, like, how does it work if the county is getting more than 50% of the,
The county exec getting more than 50.
no, the county in general, has more than 50% say on the board, does that matter? Yes, no, probably doesn't.
So what they're saying is the county exec would pick 5, and then the county council would then have to approve those 5.
I do understand
Right.
that part. I'm saying the other 4, and my point was, does the county get more than 50% of the board appointees, is my question.
Which it might, because the county's probably going to be providing a lot of the resources to the board, so they probably want to have a say,
Yeah, no, I'm not, I'm just,
right?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm hoping for,
Strictly a
you know,
question,
rain
not-
from heaven,
Also,
money
who-
from heaven, but we
who
know
are you thinking?
Matt's experience, it
What?
doesn't exist.
No,
For the other-
question.
Money's going to
not
come
above the
from
4?
Yeah.
county and, or whatever this entity can generate.
So, okay, so we talked
No.
about the self-sustainability of the organization.
That is on the list of things we haven't addressed yet, but yes, it's.
I just think-
Okay, but I mean, we talked about it,
Yeah,
right?
That's why I
So
think-
if we're talking
that's why I'm
about
trying to keep it
having
small.
a board that's appointed by the county council to start, because we know we're getting so much seed funding and support from the county.
Well, they're nominated
Do
by
we know that?
the county
No.
exec, and they're ratified by the county
That's in our
council.
magical uniform.
Oh, okay. I'll just
So
confirm
let me just put this on the table.
Uh-huh.
If the board's composition is recommended by the 5 members, 7, pick the number, recommended by the county exec to the county council, confirmed by the county council, right? Then we have a group, a core group, that went through the vetting process that way. That group then turns and creates another 4 seats, 3 seats, whatever the magic odd number needs to be, to get us to that odd number, so that we have majority of folks that come through the county exec council process, because again, I think the resources are coming from that direction, at least initially. And then we have another complement of people that aren't engaged in the machinations of that process, but they have that skill set we're looking for.
Right.
And hopefully, everybody that the county exec recommends has that skill set too. Then I think we've got a board. I think we passed the council sniff test because they had a say in every appointment, and the county exec kicks it off. The only challenge there would be the county exec doesn't drive this group of people all the way through, because then he's got to take the chance the council engaging in this is going to go along with, his or her suggestions.
Got it. So now I'm thinking again further down the line, and is this beyond our scope, or is this something that we want to take into consideration as well? Once we get that initial board appointed, in the future, is the future composition also determined in part by the county exec and the council, or is it going to be something where the board is perpetually
I think it should.
self-generating?
I mean, my gut says you should maintain the county executives and the county's
Prerogative.
engagement in their prerogative, but also just their engagement in that component of the organization so that it's always.
I strongly concur with that, because
Yeah.
I think if we're talking about giving or lending or whatever the verb is, county property to an unelected, otherwise essentially unaccountable group of people, that doesn't fly politically. So at least if there's county involvement via the executive and with the stamp of approval of the council, at least you have some sort of vetting process to ensure that people just don't go rogue.
What about the model of the EDC here in the county? How are those appointments made? Because that's actually an economic development group.
The
EDA.
EDA, sorry, thank you, EDA.
Right?
Bud?
Our board is voted on by the council, but nominations are made through the county executive, I believe. They're
Yeah.
typically sourced from other board members.
Yeah.
So the board members say,
Which
I
I
know
know.
someone, so the other goes to the county executive nominates them, and then they are voted on and approved by
The
the council.
Okay, so if we
Does that make
start
sense?
with the county executive nominates his
A
five,
slate of people.
and those five are then ratified by the county council.
Right?
Then we let those five pick the remaining four, which are then ratified also by the county council.
May I add one other thing for consideration? Our board is staggered in existence as well, so that we actually have members on our board that have been nominated by 3 different county executives, so that they term off at different cycles, so that it's not one board
Yeah.
entirely
And you can
controlled by a
create-
single county
You
executive.
can
just
create
as
that
for
from
consideration.
start
Yeah,
by just
rotating.
having, some of them would only have a 1-year term and some of them might have a 3-year term or something like that. And you could stagger them through just from the beginning. You wouldn't have to slowly get the board up to speed. But
it's a good point.
Yeah,
We
staggering.
want to have staggered terms so that we don't have an en masse.
By
kind of
having county
every
council
4 years, we
ratify
gotta create a whole
everybody,
board.
that keeps that engagement.
Do we want the county council ratifying everyone? I don't think you do. I think the county executive appoints 5 with the concurrence of the county council, and the board itself
It's the other four.
gets to put 4 of its own on with their own concurrence.
Okay.
What skill sets? Who's on the board?
Thank you.
We're going to have to take that up next week, Gary. And I want you to read this section. Because I did take a stab at that. And I'm not making fun
Get
here.
your driver pen out and then.
Yes.
Yeah, but Nicholas, which do you prefer? Nick is fine.
Hey, so
I hate
we're gonna do
doing
the 5, like you said,
Like, let's put
and then
that.
that board is
Is there
gonna
any
pick the
objection
board.
to that comment that Nick made a few seconds ago about
No
that
objection.
composition? Are you okay with that,
Sounds
Angie, are you okay with that?
Yeah.
That structure works?
5 members
Oh,
appointed
come
by
on!
5 members appointed by the county executive with the concurrence of council, and those 5, the board itself
Finds
nominates
4
4
others.
4 others.
For a total of 9.
And they, at their discretion and approval. So that doesn't come back to the council, because that would be strange.
And would work out a staggered term
Yeah.
consideration such that unfortunately some people
Maybe
may only
say
have
9 staggered.
1 year,
members.
2 years,
members
and then
of
they're
board
off,
staggered
but
members.
they can come back again
Sure.
later,
Yeah.
right? So,
And are we distinguishing like the 5 appointees as those positions that will be again ratified later by the council?
So we have it there now.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
I think you need to have those five positions should always be ratified back for.
And then the other four are always appointed.
Yeah, it's a
by-
majority, it's a majority of the board, too.
They still have a voice, they'll still have a voice.
Right.
Yeah, you don't end up with a board completely comprised of people who have been self-appointed by the board.
Right, and there's a majority of the board that's always county derived.
Yeah.
Through the process. So when the Constitution was created, I don't know how many people were around. 70 million. Is this how it? I was here for that. So this is what it was like, all right?
The Federalist Papers?
There are pictures
Just
of
a
me in
note
the
about
Garden of Eden,
timeline,
smiling as the apples.
Wait,
So just a note about timeline, it's May 8th,
right, we have 2 more meetings before you are off.
1.
Oh, we have only 1 meeting before you're off.
So I would suggest that we wrap up the outline by the end of the next meeting,
Yes,
so that we have some time to actually like get a report written,
yes.
and then come back together and review the written report.
Okay.
So
So next week, if we could come a little earlier than 7, maybe, because I want to have enough time to get through the balance of this, and maybe Shana, could we recirculate what you've done tonight, capture these thoughts? And then let's focus on the things, to Gary's point earlier, that we haven't addressed, and try to get this
And
wrapped
also
up next week.
send me, read through it and send me your thoughts before the meeting, and that way,
Yeah.
maybe Mike and I can work to like incorporate
Happy to
people's
do
thoughts
that.
together, and then
And
put it back out
before you
to
go,
you.
those people, there are a few of us, and they're unfortunately standing up right now, but if you own a restaurant in downtown Ellicott City, you want to bring some noshes in, certainly welcome.
Absolutely.
I only bring
Shane.
alcohol, sorry.
Can we do that?
Can we do that? We're done, we're done.
Next week.
Thank you, everybody.
I would love to
Thank
do
you.
that.
Good night.
Let's see,
Good night.
Wednesday.